that I just happened to watch one of those shows, that Paranormal Caught on Camera
Oh
show,
yeah, yeah.
and I saw you on there with something to do with Bigfoot, and I thought, wait a minute here, that's a him. I thought, man, he does get out there on that TV there.
Yeah, that company purchased a few videos from us. I don't know when they'll put up the other ones. Kind of, they're all weirdness, strange sightings and whatever. And yeah, they approached me a while back. Real good group to work with, actually. They were real fair. A lot of them aren't, so I went ahead and did it.
Oh, so Brad said, very cool new machine that you're doing. It looks interesting. I'm assuming, so you're going to be out at Moon Lake this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's next month. That's coming up.
that's coming up fast. Yeah, really
And
fast for us. Yeah.
you're going to have that out there and talk about it. I'm sure you're one of the speakers.
Yeah, I know I'll be presenting at some point. I'm not sure what Mark wants me to do. They let me know kind of what bracket and thank you, and everything like that. So I guess I'll probably be doing the Bigfoot thing again. I'm sure I'll be doing a different presentation than I did last time. I might even incorporate kind of the common aspect toward a lot of the ancients that were here before, Bigfoot, and potentially off-worlders, or I don't know, whatever they are, little ultra-terrestrial, riptoid, whatever. Because we find a lot of their same stuff, all their iconography mixed together in a lot of these hyper ancient sites we work. So the high strangeness of actors always there, and I might go ahead and do a presentation, kind of those the relationships of how they are.
So what is your probably your main forte that you're into? Far as is it Bigfoot or UFOs or what is your main?
No, I would have to say ancient advanced cultures or hidden forbidden knowledge and history, um, sites, devices, features, things like that. I let people know I got really well known for the Bigfoot thing over the last like 10 years that we jumped in because we kind of went in at such a high level. And then but I tell people that's represents probably 2% of the stuff we actually do. And it all kind of edges on high strangeness, and only because I've found some really big sites many years ago, and then a lot of the big pros came in and backdoor agencies and this and that. So, it just takes you different branches on the tree, and so all those aspects of the basically forbidden knowledge and who was actually here on this continent and what they were doing and the whole 9 yards. So that's really where it's at right there for us in all actuality. Which led us to developing this new software. Even for the Bigfoot stuff, I developed a device that lets you hear a human talking in optimal conditions a mile away. But what's interesting about it is, and more novel about it, we just got our patent pending on it right now, is it has the ability to pinpoint down to a 1 degree or 2 degree wide field pattern of listening. About 80% of the sound will come off that tiny little spot. So it works just kind of like a flashlight that you focus and then it extends the range. And so this has the capability of doing that same thing. And then that enables us to be able to like pick out a single tree with an owl, let's say, and at a mile we can identify which tree that owl is sitting in when it makes its noise. So, and then now that we're doing that was for the Bigfoot deal. So now we sell that technology. We got a patent pending on it. It's going to be going to like the military in India, and others want to play with it and everything, and for early warning and sensor system. And then now we're pumping. I know you're aware because you signed up as a beta tester. So, but we're now developing technology around the treasure hunting thing. So, I was always into research and recovery, like I said, on a pretty high end since 1994 at least. And then what that had turned into is some really big finds and whatnot, and getting my hands on a lot of pretty advanced technology and working with the developers and the inventors of the technology. So most of the stuff I got trained on, I was trained by the people who invented or one of the software guys for it. And then those it just went down the line now to where after the 10 years of the Bigfoot run, and I've pretty well tiered that, and I still am involved in that, still doing speaking and stuff on it, but we're trying to slide back into the ancient history and culture because a lot of the new technology that's coming up, and also I'm watching now that everybody can talk to each other and throw things out, right? Everybody's just throwing everything in the world out there, and so now it's getting even more difficult to follow a solid branch of information without just falling off and getting lost in all the leaves, So I want to focus back down on kind of the reality of what's out there since we've been exposed to it, and and that means putting the time and the boots on the ground, developing the technology that'll enable us to do it. And that's where, like I said, the GeoPro 3D we just developed, that came from.
So when you're talking about, are you talking about, like I hear people talk about little people and giants and stuff like that? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, to a point, I guess. Sure, there was other humans and things running around with us at times, and probably even still to this day, as far as the little people go. But more so, there's other things out there. Whether people say, "Oh, they're ETs," and all this, and we're finding that there's something else as well out there that's dinosauric or reptoid looking or whatever that the people dealt with way back. And a lot of these ancient cache sites we see that are heavily monumented were actually created by them. And from everything we've gleaned, Native American stuff, and even on the glyphs and everything that we find, it would appear that they're not from somewhere else, at least these guys, that they're actually from here. And they would be a subterranean species of being that evolved a long time ago, and they're still around. So, and that's kind of one of the things that everything we run into out in the field when we get to the core of why and what with these big sites, it usually turns out that they've had some involvement or another in it.
So with that machine, so if you're up on stage and there's hundreds of people out there in that audience, and you're looking at somebody in the back, they're saying, "What the hell are they talking about?" You can zoom that thing right in there and say, with your headphones on, and listen to their conversation.
Oh yeah, real easy. Yeah. You can even at several blocks away in a city, you can point it at the windows of a restaurant and hear the people talking inside. So, just off the vibration off the windows. So yeah, it's a pretty cool device.
I could see some handiness. I could listen to what my neighbors are saying about me across the way.
That's what everybody says. They don't want when they're going to find out what everyone really thinks about them, right?
Yeah. What are them guys sitting on the porch? I wonder what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was this device. I don't know what makes it. It's like it's in a little weird thing, and I guess it's to look at the moon and stuff with it. It's high tech, but you can shine it so far away and see somebody in their backyard miles away, but you can't hear them. So that'd be kind of cool to incorporate some of that stuff together.
Right. Get the audio long range. Well, we're also building. This is going to be a while. Building an app right now that will be loaded with all the Cornell universities, all their wildlife signatures. So all the audio vocal signatures of everything in North America will be loaded in this app. And then when animals call and make sounds, it'll automatically identify those by their vocal signature. Just like we have voice recognition locks for our phone and all that. Same kind of technology. So it'll be an artificial intelligence app, and that'll go with our dishes eventually. And that way, it'll sit and it'll throw up what animal's making that noise as you hear the animal, or unknown, or you can tag it as a known to teach the AI. It basically is very similar to the way our GeoPro 3D stuff works, because that's all AI controlled as well. So
that'd be cool to take that stuff up hunting, going on hunting trips, and have that stuff there.
Oh yeah, Ron, my buddy Ron Castor, he's a great friend, great help, and he bought one, and he works for the U.S. Forest Service. He's actually, I think it's his 20th year. He's a manager over there in Arizona of a region. And he was working on a fire on the side. They do a lot of basically, overtime work or off time work or whatever, where they go positioned on a fire watch or whatever. And he was doing that, and they were bored at the pickup, and they were listening to elk. And on the map, the ridge they were listening to their footfalls was 2 miles away, so they could hear the elk walking 2 miles away on the rock.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty incredible. Yeah, for hunting it'd be awesome. Yeah.
So so this new machine, or the one of the 3D scans and all of that, you can hook that up to any detector.
Anything that puts out audio. So even not just detectors, but 2 boxes, magnetometers, anything that'll give an audio tone to the user. We take that audio tone and then we translate that with the AI and generate imaging off of that. Yeah. So far tested, we've been able to use an out-of-date OKM Rover C, which they don't have software for anymore. So it's basically a $12,000 paperweight. And with this, I can just plug it right in and scan with it all day. And it doesn't need their software. It does not depend on anything, because all I'm using is what your headphones would get. And so so yeah, any detector that puts out an audio tone, and they all have really crazy ways of registering. You know better than anybody. Um, all their different tonal responses for how they tell you something's in the ground, whether it's beep 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 or like all metal mode where it scales up, down. All those things will still provide imaging information for the software. Mainly, it's just the user might have to develop a different method of using his machine to get that data. But yeah, it'll just about anything you plug into it. And then what we're doing with it right now, I've never seen anything this advanced before. Not yet, because this was all designed by AI, and it was designed by the same AI that they used to build CERN. Matter of fact, CERN AI is one of the first we used, and we used Claude, Sonnet, and GPT, and even Grok for a little while. But we use them in stereo, so we'll use two of those AIs. We'll give them both our program. Both are capable of reading the code, understanding what we want, what the program does, and then they both run it and they discuss it between themselves and they work out fixes and they improve it, and then they come up with ideas and tell us like, hey, if you guys will do this, we can do this. And so we're letting it define what it needs, and then we're giving it what it needs to be able to see and feel its surroundings. And so we've already accomplished probably the impossible, and this is the early stages to where it's going to go. The AI seems to feel that not only would we be able to image objects, but also potentially tell you how long they've been in the ground by the mineral accumulation on the outside of the object. So it can actually distinguish all of that from these fields. It's pretty insane, and you'd think it's impossible, but it works. And we're testing it, and it works.
So basically, so like, is it like you're looking for an underground cache or like a box of gold coins or treasures or something like that?
Yeah, whatever. Anything, any imaging device, anything you're looking for. So if you want to find mineral with a magnetometer, like the OKM Rover series mags and stuff, they'll find ore bodies, caves, whatever. That's still going to be transmitted directly into our software. So it's going to be able to look and find, or look for and find whatever it is that your machine that you have in your hand can register. So anything and its capabilities of the device itself. So we're not building. We do have a device, but this isn't it. This isn't a device, it's software, and you put it into your laptop, and then you basically allows you to plug your metal detector directly into your laptop. We use a wireless mic setup, so we have a 150-foot range, and but doing that, it's basically anything you plug into it is going to give you imaging data, because its field is experiencing the ground, and it's going to tell the user what it is through an audio signal. So we're just translating that audio signal into viewable data or information.
So you're going to have one of them in the Moon Lake to show and tell or demonstrate and all that?
Yeah, well, like I said, it's a software package, so we'll bring computers with that loaded onto it, and then like we'll probably go over to the Fisher table and say, hey, plug your detector into this laptop real quick and walk around with it, and then and show them a 3D map made with their own metal detector. That's kind of where we'll be, and we'll have devices there. We'll have I'm also representing a company that wants to partner with us so they can supply this software with their new unit, and that's called, it's the company's name is going to be Okta, but it's their unit that they're coming out with. The first one is the HS6000, and it's all American electronics, but it's in a Chinese case because they're using carbon fiber and whatnot, and you can't afford that stuff in the U.S. So, but it is all American electronics, American company, and the Okta 6000 is a pulse induction with about an 8-foot loop. It's 6 to 8 foot ground loop, or it comes down to 1 meter or whatever, 4 feet, somewhere in there. And it allows you to punch anywhere 15 to 20 feet. And so we're now just bringing that up into the testing with the software to see, because we're also going now for volumetric view, which is kind of a view like bubbles floating in 3D space for whatever the whatever object is throwing the field, let's say, and it'll throw up a bubble form in 3D space. And so, and in order to do that, normally takes some type of depth, whether it be, like GPR, it can ring depth because it can count reflection. Well, you can't do that with a metal detector, so we have to work on it a different way. And we are, and it's working. But we just haven't been able to finalize all that for this bigger unit yet, because the coil's so big compared to like a metal detector or a mag sensor is little bitty. And here we've got this 8-foot loop, so we have to find a way to program the software so it knows this loop is 8 feet, and that way we can get depth on everything. And so that's a new whole accurate depth, and that's a whole another rascal there. So
Well, so, since you're kind of, I wanted to ask you a couple questions, but one of them is, I have heard, you're talking, I guess, similar to this, like frequencies and different things like that. And I've heard everything puts out a frequency. So, like, let's say if there's big gold nugget in the ground, and it's putting off, and I've heard that, like the frequency might be like 3 or something like that kilohertz. But then if you had like a spectrum analyzer, could you point that at that, and would that pick that up?
yeah, so let's put it this way. So let's say you're running a detector that has no discrimination on it. Whatever it signals on is going to show up on your data map. And then let's say that it has discrimination, you turn discrimination on. Only the metals you allow are what's going to show up in your data map. So like I said, whatever the device will pick up is what's going to show up in your data. And it's going to come straight across just like that. And so multi-frequency detectors and things like that, it really doesn't matter, because what we're listening to is the audio tone that is sent out to the user. So the metal detector's already done all of its own work, and we're just seeing, it's kind of like if you could keep track of every little tone and nuance and spike that you experience over an area, and then imagine all of that at the same time, every little nuance at the same time, and put that on a map so you can just see it all. That's what we're doing. So it's kind of like we are the human. The software is instead the human that walks around with the detector, and the software is experiencing all of that, putting it all together and showing it all in one big block on a map.
So what's so? I mean, so I've seen some of the pictures and things that you've posted, where like the culverts or whatever's picking up. Would it actually? I mean, does it have to be something like say a box full of coins, or could you actually decipher bigger gold nuggets in the ground too?
Like I said, whatever the device you're scanning with will pick up, and then it'll also extend the capabilities some, because our ears only hear down to certain levels, and our software, you can tune it so it can pick up and register sounds coming out of the headphone output that you can't hear, and we can still get that data and map with it. So even changes in the ground, where we'd always ignore that, just the woo, woo, there's always little warble or ground sound behind a lot of units and things. Normally we completely ignore that and we go for our targets. Well, this will map with all of that, because something is changing in the ground to make those hums and those low tones and things. That's the changes in the ground. So let's say you have a backfilled ditch. Theoretically, RF is going to be different. Radio frequency that coming off the detector is going to be different when it hits the backfill. It's gonna treat that signal differently than it would with nothing else. So if the unit makes noise during that experience, you can see that small change. So it doesn't matter if it's an engine block or if it's an 8-penny nail. Really is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's still going to both show up on the thing. Now, if you had an 8-penny nail on top of an engine block, obviously not, because it's just going to be a huge signature from an iron target. But with what we're developing, if you put an iron nail on the surface and the engine block 6 or 8 feet deep, if your device picks up that deep, then it will distinguish between the nail above it and the block below it. And that's something that I don't think any software can do right now. But like I said, so it just depends on what you plug into it. Like if you plug in a rover, the OKM stuff, you can map backfill. You can dig a hole, put the dirt back in the hole, and you can see that, because it's passive and it just maps magnetic fields. And so the Earth's magnetic field is screwed up where you dug the hole. The ground in the Earth is polarized. So for thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, whatever, the Earth's field flowing a certain direction through it aligns all the electrons and everything in a band like a magnet. And so if you turn that, rotate it, instead of lines going straight down, let's say a flow from the magnetic field, they would go down, turn, and then go down. You'll see that turn in that data, because the mag field's interrupted or messed up right there. I got a cat, a blind cat trying to get my lap here. So, but so you'll see
You
that.
went silent.
Uh-oh.
You lost your audio.
We got it back?
The audio disappeared.
Hey. Let's see. Oh,
Gone.
okay. I'm back.
Oh,
I'll
there.
let you.
Yeah.
I don't know how that muted. I don't have a mute button here, but anyway. Yeah, I had a blind cat trying to get in my lap, and I'm back. So, so yeah, it's really, like I said, so if anything messes with the magnetic field and you're using a mag, even though we think of it as, I'm going to be finding iron targets with my mag, but really the mag is finding the magnetic field all of the time. And as that field flows and hits objects, if they're made of iron, you have an object, and if it's made of iron, the magnetic field will hit it, charge it, and it will emit an electromagnetic field. So each of the iron things show up as what we call hot. They're hot fields. And then if it hits a block of ceramic, let's say that's non-magnetic, it'll compress against one side of it, and there'll be an eddy on the other side. So you'll have a red band, and then you'll have a medium color, and then you'll have a blue band, because there's a high compression, a density of magnetic field, and there's an eddy, just like a river. If you can imagine, what we're doing, like with the rover, you're looking through 60 to 80 feet of, it's like looking through water, 60 or 80 feet of it at the same time. But we're not seeing the objects in the water. We're seeing the water that's flowing around the objects. And that's what those map. And everybody gets them wrong. A lot of people used to really badmouth OKM because they couldn't find anything, or they'd dig and thered be nothing there. And really, it's just because it's not the technology, it's the way they see the technology. They don't really realize that they're looking at a magnetic field in motion that's moving around objects. They think that they're seeing the signature of the object itself. And really, you're not. You're seeing the difference. So if it's a positive magnetic field, it's a difference from the neutral that's around it. That's the only reason you see it. And same thing when you have an absence of a field. And I was asked earlier today if, how can you eliminate nails that are over a tunnel and this and that? Well, you have to remove them. Because if you haven't, the absence of something can't be seen in the presence of something. So if you have a nail over a void, you're not going to see the void, because the void is nothing and the nail's a something. And so that's how we have to envision all this. It just depends on the technology you're using. Our software is able to look at those signatures and still throw you up an anomaly or a pattern or a feature. It even tries to identify or help lay out the feature for you. It gives you that data as well. So it gives you both just a straightforward look, and then it also gives you what the AI declares. So there's several ways it shows you information, like it'll draw the lines on the side of a tunnel or culvert on the bottom map, and then the top will be the data, and it does it all at the same time. And so if you are using a metal detector or whatever, it has a different way of functioning, but it still has a response. So it really doesn't matter with this if you're using a metal detector or a 2-box, a magnetometer or whatever, because there's a difference between the ground and the thing, we can see it. And the software is going to understand there's a difference there. It's going to show the values. And as it's mapping both frequency and amplitude as well, both of them at the same time. So the power of that signal, as well as how the frequency is changing.
So your software, so the software is 3D, and I understand the old OKMs, they had that kind of the screen that you'd show you the same, the 3D graphs and all. So I've got a detector. I was just trying to see if it's already packed. It's one of them deep seeking ones that has that great big 4-foot coral that 2 people walk with, but it's got a little 3D screen on it too. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference with, say, that little screen there, what is kind of mapping in 3D, and the software you got? Can they be incorporated, or is it kind of the same technology?
Well, it's not the same technology, but it is kind of doing the same result. Most of the ones that come out are just a very basic plot map that is then encoded into like a size and color. So for how strong the signal is, they'll do a size, and the frequency it comes across, they'll do a color. And it shows things up. It'll show you the basic of the ground map of the magnetic field. But as far as distinguishing items, materials, and all that, it's just going to be, like I said, it's all you're seeing is this raw magnetic data. And so ours is totally different than that because it's actually thinking, going through into data, finding the commonalities, and then showing you those common factors. And then as well, we can adjust with sliders and filters and put 4 different filter settings and move all that data values around. And that's actually how our AI, it has a setting now in the software where you can click it. It will run however many scans you tell it to, and then it'll find the common factors and it'll label them for you and say we've detected an anomaly. And we're just teaching it that right now. But like I said, it's going to register whatever the machine registers. That's going to be in the data. And then unlike OKM, if you throw a nail out in front of, if you have a tunnel on one side of your scan area and you throw a nail on the opposite side of the scan area, you'll never see the tunnel. That's how OKM works, because it works like discrimination and it alters the entire scan based on whatever to get that medium value. And we don't set a medium value. The high and low is whatever the device puts out. So on ours, we don't interpolate that data that way. We leave that nail there. We leave the tunnel there. They're both separate. They are what they are, and that's how our software approaches it. And then it will work on amplifying that tunnel signature or that nail or however you play with it. So it's almost go ahead.
Oh, so you mentioned hooking it up with OKM, but so let's just say if I had, like, I gave up, I used to have the Fisher, and I kind of gave up on the Fisher 2-box. Now that you have that Deus 2, the Deep Seeker 2-box Deus that's kick ass, kind of multi-frequency. So what you've got that software, can you hook that up then to say the Deus 2 just that way?
Yeah, as long as it puts out an audio signal. So if it has a setting, or if it comes to headphones, has an audio port, then yeah, we can. I mean, I could image with this. I can image with a handheld pinpointer because it makes noise. And so I can literally pass the pinpointer over a grid area and give you a 3D image or whatever's underneath it, even with a pinpointer. It doesn't matter what it is because the software doesn't care as long as it puts out an audio tone that we can take in and analyze. That's what we're doing. So that Deuce machine, it'll work just like it does as long as it puts out an audio signal. Okay. Now, people have told me that some of the new OKM stuff doesn't have an audio out port, but then we just throw a lapel mic on the side of the machine and send it over anyway. Yeah, so we throw it into a wireless mic, put the lapel mic right on the speaker, and then send that sound over to the rover. So we can still, as long as it produces audio and audio tone, we can do that. Now, they're looking at the fields, and then they have their own computer algorithms that are looking at the fields. So they should be able to do much better than we can do. But they're still, everything is being developed in the same mental processes they were 40 years ago. You ring its bell, it rings back to you. What does that tell me? And we don't do that because we're looking at the relationships of sound, frequency versus amplitude versus timing. And we look at the timing on the nanoscale. We actually look at the timing in like 100,000th of a second or whatever. That thing's looking at timing issues because fields travel at different speeds. Through materials, they travel at different speeds where they're being reflected by materials. So instead of looking at a frequency that's coming off an actual frequency, not an audio tone like the detectors are doing, we're going around all that, and we're predicting what these fields would be like, and then it's comparing this stuff like one against the other to kind of give you an answer. So it's kind of a whole different animal. The effect is similar, but it's a whole different animal.
So is this like so you take, it's a CD, I'm assuming your software CD, and you're going to put it in the laptop?
Yeah. Now it's not available on CD because of the type it is. And so, but it's that what you do is you purchase the software, download it, and then our system takes your computer credential, the computer ID, and then it knows that computer. And so if you re-download it, or you screw your computer up, or you got to format it, or you don't have to buy another license or anything like that, once it's active, then our system knows that. So it's like if you had to change computers, even we allow two. That way, a person can get it in their laptop and in their PC at home, because most laptops just suck at kriging data because the touch deal and the whole it just makes it a pain in the butt. A mouse on a PC is the way to go, and you're going to be analyzing your data. And so, yeah, we allow one for each. So you can get one for a laptop, one for your PC. And then, like I said, per computer, it's unlimited. So like OKM, if you had 3 crashes, you're out. You got to spend another $700 for a software license. And we're not doing that. It's like your computer can crash 15 times. As long as it's the same computer, it'll download it, it'll refresh and go back in that version. So that's the intent behind it. And then, and this way as well, um, main reason that, well, back in the day, they delivered it to you on a CD is so that they could encode the license and registration system within the CD. And so that way you can't use the software, you can't copy the software, and you can't do all this. You can make 1,000 copies of our software, but you couldn't install it without connecting to our portal. And so, and we use NFT security, so SHA-256, which is the same security that runs Bitcoin. So right now, with today's standard, it's basically unhackable. And we did all that because I wanted to get away from the way all the standard stuff is working. It's all proprietary and regulated to the max, so they can continually get the money from you. And we're not doing that. Once you own the software, it's your software, you own it. And you have the right to open it and use it, or whatever the hell you want to do with it. Just not ship it to somebody else's computer, basically.
So you'll have that at the Moon Lake or whatever for people. I mean, so I'm assuming you're going to talk about that. People that say they want to go download it and all that. So that's actually available now then.
Yeah, it's actually available now. And we are still modifying it. We're out of the beta tester phase, but we are still modifying and upgrading at high speed. Like right now, they're changing the way all the AI engineering engines in the world work. And they're working through what they call API keys, which is they can charge you basically per prompt or per change that is done to a program. They charge you, and it's a lot of money now. So we ramrodded this whole thing in before that change took place, or we would have probably never been able to have developed something that was this advanced. It's really come down to the wire, to that kind of a wire on all this stuff. So
Now here's a question. Panama prospect. How does it treat crystals and large carbon coal or diamonds that absorb signals?
well, again, it'll be definitely based on the machine or the device that you're connecting to it. So now, naturally, metal detectors aren't going to do really anything on crystal deposits and whatnot. They certainly could, and if there is a difference, we'll see the difference. So the software, if there's a difference that comes across the audio signal, the software is going to show that difference. It's going to demonstrate it. So any effect is what we're looking for. We're not looking for necessarily specific effects or specific colors or anything like that. What we want to look for are the objects and the features to see what's going on. And so if there's a crystal deposit that affects a radio wave from a metal detector or a magnetic response from a mag, it's going to show up in the software. It'll show up in the data.
So this information that you've got, say somebody wants to go check it out or whatever, where people could go to get more information about all of this?
We have a home site, and I was going to try to see if I've got that link. I don't think this will do anything to you. I hope not. Did you disappear?
No.
Okay, it didn't disappear. All right. So my Wix website, tech. Let me go home. Okay, so we have a home page set up right now that's kind of a temporary one that's going to be for now until we get the main portal all set up. This is a Wix page where it was built. And this is for all the information, talks about it, and it has links to go get the software and everything else. And you can see our security and our tech. And that is at https:// same as most sites, explore it all, period, Wix site, that's WIXSITE.com. So that's exploreitall.wixsite.com, and then /GeoPro3D. And so that's the home for now. And then, but you can, Our web portal. Let me try to get you back on the screen here. Our web portal is geopro3d.ai. So you just www.geopro3d.ai. And that's actually where our subscription service is, and all of our database and our software. And that's where you can talk with our developers. And even our chat we'll have two forms of chat. One will be with an intelligent AI that understands geophysics, that understands our technology, our code, and can discuss these things with the user. Each user, it will develop kind of a relationship with each user that uses it through the web portal as well. So it learns kind of with you as you use your own software. And we don't have access to any of that. So whatever you do with that thing is up to each user. But yeah, that's there. And then we also have a Facebook page that's GeoPro3D on Facebook. So pretty easy to find.
Cool. Well, we out here, we're just starting to get into some of this 3D mapping, treasure hunting type stuff. You know, I'm kind of transitioning from gold prospector to gold treasure hunter.
Nice.
And so some of the software, and I've just bought this. I don't know if you've seen this one.
No.
And that's the new one they're coming out, and made in Australia, PI VLF machine. So I just bought that one. But anyway, so I've got all these detectors that I haven't used yet, some of these deep seeking machines and 3D imaging things. And so I'm intrigued by that because, you know, I mean, you know, out here, we're like I say, we're starting to get into treasure hunting and some of these buried Spanish treasures and stuff we want to find. So
yeah. And I mean, with the array of metal detectors you've got, that's why I really appreciated you when you came on early, and I knew I could work with you as part of our testing too, because, you know, you're going to be plugging in stuff that nobody else has, this unit, this unit, this unit, this unit, this unit, to walk up and plug in. Because really that's all it is. You can be scanning with one unit, you can do half a scan with one unit and finish the scan with another unit. And our software doesn't care. So it's just literally unplug it, plug it into another one. And you might need to set your gain level from the volume coming in, whatever. But other than that, there's no real change. So you could let you scan with one and plug the other one in, scan with the other one, plug the other one in, scan with the other one. And, you know, so you have all these, you're going to get to compare all this stuff, you know. So eventually we're going to be squeezing your brain too to, you know, create a settings deal to where you have profiles for different machines, so our AI will understand what machine you're using and what it does, and that's going to be all after we get feedback, you know, from people like you.
So if I bring out my laptop in whatever I had and hook it up, you can kind of help understand. See, because to me it's kind of like Greek. I have a hard time, you know, grasping it, and that's why I really haven't played too much with it.
Right.
Because, you know, my brain can only hold so much image, and it's like I'm involved with so many projects that I just, you know.
Well, it's easier than anyone would think it is, because I've used a lot of different kinds of software, especially in the early years when they were really complicated. It's easier. So we built it so there's really nothing to do. You know, you start the analyzer screen. That's your feed that goes across from your audio signal. You name your file. You basically, there's big windows. You can use them with gloves on if you need to or whatever, you know, on touch screen. But then you just basically, you're going to set like your pulses per second. We let you set up to 10 pulses per second. That way you can drive on the back of a quad at 3 or 4 miles an hour and still image at 1 foot resolution, you know. Or you could even go up even higher than that. You could go a lot higher if you want to try to squeeze that much data into a scan. But so, and then we have like a countdown, or we have a line count. So you put in how many your line's going to be, and it could be anywhere from 0 to 100. And then we have a countdown timer that you can set. So it just doesn't, you turn it on, gives you a warning. You could set this one over a minute if you wanted to. And so it lets you start it, and it'll sit there and count down all this time until you get ready in position, and then it'll tone you when to begin. And so we have those settings, but really that's all there is. And that's right on the front. So it's just something you would normally just set. You select a file name, whatever. There's no complicated save to or anything. Whatever you type in the box ends up the file name, and it ends up in downloads. It doesn't matter. So nothing ever goes anywhere, gets hidden off in a lost file or anything like that. It's all straightforward. And you don't have to stop one and restart another. All you got to do is put a different name in that file box. And so there's none of this save to or any of that stuff. It's way simpler, way faster than that. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, when I first started playing with it, I was asking you questions and you're, doing different things. And, but so let's say I got this other machine. It's a PI. It's called the Mole, and it's just a big box, a detector, but it's hooked up to a blanket coil that you pull behind your ATV or something, a big, 4-foot blanket. So this software would hook up to that. And if I'm pulling, say the blanket is my coil, then I'm picking it up. And so the audio, if I go over, say, a target, I go over something, is it constantly reading the ground as I'm moving and the patterns are 3D that you're seeing?
No. Matter of fact, that's what our pulse rate is for. So you can set it to go from 1 pulse per second, where it'll take 1 sample per second, like the OKM stuff basically does. Or you can raise that up to 10 samples per second. And that's high. That's basically 1/10 of a foot, right? So if you did 12 samples per second, you're sampling every inch. You see what I'm? And if you're moving at 1 foot per second, so your rate of travel is going to change how much you want it to hit on. If you want to travel faster, you can increase those samples per second, so you still get the same resolution. Or if you're going to go real slow, you can set, at 1 foot or whatever resolution, or 1 sample per foot, and get that same thing. So yeah, so we can change that sample rate, what we want. Now we don't see much reason to go, say, under the equivalent of what an inch would be if you were traveling forward at 1 foot per second. Even though you could sample it, and then if you progress slowly, you could take 30 samples per inch, because it's how far you're going to travel in 1 second. And so however that far that is, this is how many samples you want. So let's say you could travel 50 feet in 1 second. You're flying a plane or whatever. Well, you could set it for samples at 50 samples per second. And so it would be sampling at that speed at 1 per foot. See?
Wow, that's pretty fast, though.
Yeah, that's really fast. So that's why I say this lets you, if your walk cadence fast, once you get used to it, you can set your sample rate up high, walk at normal speed. Like I said, you could do it off a quad at 10 miles an hour, or, whatever, it's still going to work.
So he has upgrading the software can be hard sometimes. How have you done this to make this easy?
Well, ours just reinstalls over the other. We don't update, basically. When you run our installer, it uninstalls the previous version and reinstalls the new version. And that way, we don't even trust upgrades, because when it's as advanced as our software is, you don't need to be reaching into the code and trying to make individual changes, because there's a potential that certain data can get corrupted or get lost in that. So we don't do that at all. And so basically updating your software, us, is re-downloading your software. You hit download it again, just the download button. It goes through, uninstalls. It'll ask you, do you want to uninstall, whatever, but it uninstalls the previous version, installs the updated version. So it's pretty simple on that end. It's not, I would try to eliminate all the issues the things I hate, I got rid of. That's, done it long enough to be pissed off enough times to know what to change.
Well, I can see a purpose for this, so we're going to have to dive into this here a little more in some things, because there's some places I got to check out. But I wanted to ask you another question that us out here in Arizona seems to be getting a lot into. And last time at Moon Lake, kind of asked you a little bit about this here, and you kind of talked to us a little bit about it. If you feel comfortable, if you don't want to talk about it, just say, I don't want to talk about that. The SX70 cameras, the Polaroids, and getting those flares, because I've heard different, like, let's just say Keen Engineering, Pat Keen. I don't know if you've heard about him.
No.
He does the big mining stuff. Keen out in California, all the mining equipment. They build equipment galore. He's pretty knowledgeable. He says what you're picking up is gases basically in the ground that it holds the heat or whatever, and then as it builds up, psh, they blow up, and you're picking them up.
Yeah.
Different elements will put out different colors of gases. The other thing you hear about, they're flares. What you see, it's like a light or something. And I know you know a little bit about this, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but some of us are trying to get into this type of
Yeah,
stuff.
so let me tell you what I know. I was taught by the CIA. That was my first big funding on a big dig was backdoor, and that was one of the things they showed me. So was and not only that, but the way to do it correctly is you get true infrared film, the kind that you have to keep under 50 degrees, keep it in a cooler or whatever, and then you use the SX70 Polaroid and the true infrared at the same time. And it depends on where you think the cache is. You want to stand 90 degrees to it because what you're getting, it's not gases. They call it halo gases or ionized emissions, and this is what it actually is. So gold is extremely conductive and it's non-magnetic, so it will not form an electromagnetic charge, but it will build up electrons on its surface because it's so conductive. It'll hold on to them. These will hold up until they, like a flame, until it gets to a critical motion, a critical amount, and then that entire amount will lift off and flare off the top and go dissipate back into the environment. And that's what those flares are. The SX70 film that takes those was not an accident. So that's how I was taught it by the CIA. Is that it was developed partially for them. And the man who developed it, I can't remember his name, but I got to talk to him on the phone before he passed away. And he's the one who talked to me about the emulsion and everything else. And he seemed to think, I asked him if we could put a similar emulsion between two glass planes and it would have a flare effect. And he seemed to think that would work. And which reminds us of what they used to call viewing plates back in the ancients used to have these mirrors or these glass panes, hold them up and then they'd see things in them and whatnot. And that's what the equivalent of that would be, where you could actually see the flare live in a visible emulsion. So when you photograph these things, if you're in a direct angle, it'll look totally different to if you're in a side angle, let's say. And the response that comes up is basically photons on a different frequency coming from, or the degenerating of this energy as this fire rises up like a flame. If you're watching a campfire, you feel the heat, but you don't see it because that radiation's gone from a plasma and degenerated into other forms of radiation, radiant heat, and you feel that. Well, that's what you're photographing with SX70. You're not photographing per se the infrared signature, even though it comes up on an infrared camera. It's the infrared response because you have a target there. That flare, that energy coming up gives a photonic or an infrared response, and that's what we're filming. Now, modern SX70 film won't work, so it doesn't matter what everybody's doing today. It does have a response, but it takes a trained person to recognize it because all that comes up, it's basically one-step film is the new SX70. It's just one-step emulsion put in the SX70 cartridges. And so that emulsion, you'll get gray banding. So you'll have like 5 gray bands going across your picture. And every one you'll take will be like that. If you move over sideways, it might go to 3, it might go to 2. That's how that film is used. So no longer will you see flares on the new SX70 film. It was the old emulsion. You might still be able to get it. People have told me, oh, they make a limited run of the old emulsion every year. And that I've never seen anything come of that. I've never seen it. I've never seen a response from it. You know, I still have 2-step cameras and they haven't, or 1-step cameras and they haven't made that film in, decades. So, and we used to buy,
Yeah,
everything they had. So,
I know right now they're on Polaroid's web page. You can buy that. It's like they do a run of it and then they sell out and then they don't have it for a long time. Right now they're out of stock.
yeah.
But so what I heard, well, like so I mean, I've taken pictures with the XX. I've known some people say they use the 600 camera and they've caught flares with that too. But my understanding was the reason you're seeing the flares back in the olden days, people thought the cameras were defective or something was wrong because they're actually catching a flare and they're not realizing they think there's something wrong with the camera.
Yeah.
But the new cameras, like your SLRs, they read the light differently or they focal differently between the two. And because the Polaroids do it differently, than your new cameras is why you're seeing the flares because of the way it's designed.
Well, it's
Where
because they're using a chemical, and so this radiation affects a chemical. It's not going to affect a sensor on a digital camera. So that's the sensors aren't built for that bandwidth of they call it infrared radiation, but it's a very narrow bandwidth. But we don't build sensors for that bandwidth. And if we did, it wouldn't be an optical sensor that you see with. It would be a metered sensor, like a tri-field meter. Let's put it that way. But the emulsion is a chemical. It's a chemical goo, and they're affecting the chemical goo with that radiation. So there's no way that a digital, there's no way that's ever going to do what the emulsion will do. Period. Because it's not a chemical.
Yeah, I just heard somehow the way the light, the picture happens after the light, or what you're seeing in the image is opposite on the newer cameras than what it was on those. But
I've heard. Go ahead. I've heard a lot of people talk, but I have yet to see a single flare image that matches any real anomaly that I've ever was taught about. So, in the last 20 years.
People say to put like infrared filters on there, or to use UV filters. You have to have a UV filter on your SX70. I've heard two different stories about those,
Right. But has anyone actually showed you pictures and said, here's what happens when I put a UV filter on my SX70? I know there's all this talk and all the internet and all the people, and every day you can post photos of anything in the world and still nobody's posted a photo of a flare. So I've seen a lot of stuff people call that, but it doesn't match anything I was taught from the CIA on what radiation does. And the only alternative I know today is true infrared film, is regular camera film, infrared film. That emulsion will react, but it will never show you the same kind of flare SX70 is. It's a totally different response. You'll get a fog. It'll look like fog, like a circle of fog in the front of the camera out away from you. That's what it'll look like. Or it'll be a stripe of light across where it's a glare, and that's what you're seeing. It's a glare pattern. So SX70 emulsion, it affects the radiation itself. So you see flares with dots, and it looks like beautiful fire and looks crazy looking, but you'll never get that with true infrared film or digital. Never, no way. It's just because it's not. Those things don't react to radiation the same way, as a chemical emulsion. So
I know there's two books out. One is about, with the big flare on the front of the cover the guy has, and another one he's showing you the different cameras. Some of them were like, say, the Canon Rebel XT was one of them he's showing, and you put the infrared filter on that, but you can't see really what you're taking a picture of. And then you have to take it into the computer and slowly bring it to light. And if there's anything there, you're going to see the glow or something like that there.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, the true flares are unmistakable. They're but again, it's something that people are not passing around, because by the time anybody learned about it, the emulsion was gone. And very few of us were ever, picked up and taken under the wing and said, here, this is what you do, here's how to use it. And that was because they wanted the value. So they, showed us what was up. But that was back in 94. I mean, it's been a long time now, right? It's almost 30 years since, and it's been a good 20 years since we've been able to get the emulsion. Like I said, you can buy SX70 cartridges, but they're loaded with the 600 emulsion. So
I have seen, there was somebody on eBay selling, you could actually use 600 film in the SX70 cameras, and then they're putting some type of a filter like in there to make that work.
Yeah, it still wouldn't work the same way, because they're not changing the emulsion. So they might, what they're doing is, so there is nanoband IR coming off that radiation, let's say. So that's why true IR film will show you this haze or a glare band. You could probably, and that's kind of what we get when we use 600 film. You just end up with either gray bands or a hazy picture. But that's not a flare. That's not the old, what people talked about from before. Those days are history as far as that goes. Because it doesn't matter what filter you put on it if the emulsion, the chemicals are different in the emulsion. If they're not going to respond to that infrared, then they're not going to, because the chemicals aren't in there. So that's why you could do all this without any fancy filters whatsoever, if you're using the right stuff. Now, it potentially could be possible that a sensor could be developed that would respond on the infrared band, but like I said, it's going to respond the same way infrared film does. It's not going to show you the radiating flare with the patterns of the plasma. I mean, we shoot the plasma. We don't get a glow. It's plasma. It looks like a fire with little lightning bolts and balls and all this. Never seen anything like that from anybody's after that, because it's a totally different process.
So when we're taking pictures nowadays with this film, SX70, and you'll see what we'll call flares all over the film, that's what, just deformity, or that's something? Because it doesn't look like the same, where your colors are. It's just kind of white is what it looks like.
Yeah, the color shouldn't really be that important. Like, again, that's due to the emulsion and how the emulsion makes that color based on what it is. So it's not like if you took a picture and had a yellow flare on it, it's not like the flare is yellow. Matter of fact, it's not got a color. It just makes the yellow effect inside the emulsion. It has that effect. On the new stuff, I've not seen any flares on new stuff. I've had 100 people going to send me, and I've not seen anything that was a flare. I'd like to, because I'd like to do the analytical work on it and see what's going on. For all I know, the only thing you're going to get is haze or gray banding, and that's what you're going to get. But even, I can tell you right now, you can take a GoPro camera, it'll do the same thing. If you get it in the infrared reflection off a major gold target, even just a good size one, it'll screw up the sensor. It'll put banding across the sensor, and it won't change until you turn it off and take the camera out of the field and turn it back on. It'll screw up that sensor, and it'll stay screwed up until you reset the camera. And any GoPro, any video camera will do exactly the same thing. It'll have interference and banding on the chip. And that's what they're talking about. It's the effect on the chip itself. It's like it wigs out the chip. That the chip doesn't pick it up. It's wigging out the chip. It's freaking out the chip is what it's doing. So what they're doing is putting a filter probably to knock out everything except infrared to increase the difference that you're going to notice. But yeah, that's about the closest you're going to get.
Okay, well, I'll bring some stuff and you tell me what you think, because some of them, like the flares that are there, you move the camera and it looks like the flares move with it. So like they're moving with the camera, and I know a lot of, anyways, but yeah. It's just one of the things that people are getting into, and so.
Yeah, and the direction of the sun is 90% of getting your flare shot, because it's glare off the sun, and your plasma is going to be. You're not going to see it from different. Well, you will with a true SX70. You'll see it from all kinds of places, but with the new stuff and with the infrared film, you have to be in a glare angle, just like glare off a bumper. You have to be in the glare point off of it to get it. Just period.
Can you still get infrared film? Can you buy that?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, for Polaroid?
No, they don't make infrared film for Polaroid.
So you can get for like a regular digital camera or something.
No, for a 35 millimeter or 100 millimeter or whatever, just for film cameras. It's film.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah,
So the old 35 film thing. Yeah, I have to use the cartridges, not digital.
Right, and then you have to keep it under 50, or once it goes over 50, it'll just expose the whole roll.
Okay.
So it has to be cold and all that stuff, and kept cold the whole time. So you keep your camera in a cooler of ice, literally wrapped up in a bag in a cooler of ice, and then you pull it out, take a shot, put it right back in the cooler, because you don't want, if the camera ever warms up to 50, it's screwed. The film will develop.
You mentioned something earlier about, I think you said orbs. So one of the guys that's out there, this guy Mike, he believes where he knows these treasures are buried at. So we went out there one day, and he heard this story, blah, blah, blah. And I'm up on the hill, and I'm taking pictures I'm using a Canon, the Rebel Canon. It's digital, but I had a red filter. I'm an infrared filter on it. And I got it where you could barely see. But when I looked in the pictures after I put in the computer and looked at, we could see these orbs like way out in the distance, these orbs, and they were like popping up all over the place. And it's like ghost, when you see ghost orbs or something, I mean, are those just something different, or is that anything what you were talking about on the orbs?
Yeah, so and flares will do the same thing. People call them earthquake lights. It's the same thing. It's plasma. And when the plasma charge is hot enough to ionize the air, it'll emit photons. So that's not going to happen normally, but it can. It can build up, build up, build up, and fly off and have enough potential energy to dissipate in the atmosphere. When it does, it'll emit photons or visible light. You can photograph those with anything. Of course, you can see them with your naked eye too. So yeah. You know, a lot of places they have these Marfa lights and whatever. There's probably massive hordes of something or another buried. You know, something highly conductive. So.
Well, I know this one guy. He was telling me one time that you get these special cameras. They're a digital camera. You have to buy them on eBay because they don't make them anymore. And they're the ones that take a picture like every 5 seconds or something. So you set it up, you point it at the mountain, you set this up to take thousands of pictures, literally, of the same spot. And you got to go through each one, and all of a sudden on one of them, you'll see a glow. And he'll say that's where there's a treasure buried at right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible, I guess. It just depends. I would think it depends on a lot of factors. And, you know, one day it might show a flare, and the next day it may not, based on just how the energy and the cosmic rays are coming and hitting it from the sun. You know, but I mean, it's certainly possible, because anytime you have a photonic reaction and high energy, when you energize atmospheric particles, they can emit photons, and that's what you're going to be seeing. You know, but if you were there when that happened, you'd probably see that light with your eyes too.
Oh,
Just like people see lights on mountains all the time. You know, they have mountains and say, "Oh yeah, we always." Even historically, 200 years ago, there's lights reported on that mountain. You know, it's still going on, and that's what that is. So you'd probably still visibly see that if you were there at the time. So.
all right. We're getting high tech stuff. All right. We'll start wrapping things up here. We've been going on. So I know we're going to go out to Moon Lake. There's a few people in here that'll be out there at Moon Lake. That's August, 14th, 15th, and 16th? Is that
Yes.
the date?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And you're going to be out at Moon Lake, so everybody's going out there. You guys can talk to Robert and show him all your cool stuff.
Yeah, we'll have a table or two, because, like I said, we're going to be bringing and promoting our software and technology. We actually have a physical device too, but I haven't. We've showed pictures of it, but I haven't released it yet or anything. And that's a little fun toy right here. This will outdo probably any scanning device on the planet, and it's fully AI loaded. It'll be able to talk to you, have a conversation. It can see, it can feel the magnetic field around itself. It tracks all of its position. You can go inside of a cave with that, and not just map the cave the way they show you with LiDAR. You can map the cave and map 100 foot deep into the walls, everything in the walls with this device. So we have not even showed this or talked about it with anybody yet, but the software was basically designed and developed to put into this. And so we're giving that software out to people to put it in their computers, but this device will be a whole new animal. And we are hoping, we're hoping to have this thing functioning at Moon Lake. So not only will we have the software solution and be able to play with that stuff, but hopefully we'll have one of these black boxes done. So that's what we're
that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
I'd love to walk in.
It's a neat rig.
Fast with that.
Yeah, it's a neat rig. And you put it on a metal detector or whatever, and it'll track the metal detector head in 3D motion everywhere you put it. So it doesn't matter if you hold it over your head or whatever, it's still going to map with it. You know, we look at maps today and we look at this grid form box, and this won't do that. It'll map around you. You'll be inside the box mapping all the way around yourself. So, yeah.
Is that like the 3D cameras that you hold and walk in?
Yeah, well, no, kind of. It's more like that photogrammetry stuff where you can photograph and then it comes up as a 3D model in your computer. And you've seen them do this with caverns when they map caverns. You know, they'll go through the whole cavern with LiDAR. It'll map all the surface. Well, this will do the same thing, and it's doing it with the detector head. Well, it's doing it with all kinds of tech. So the AI even said it would like eyes because it'd like to see while we're doing this. So
and you're into this high tech stuff, man.
Well, there's no other way. I mean, that's the whole point. You got to have the advantage. And you know, it's a dream. It's dream. That's what we're doing. I'm building a dream. So every day that you ever use the metal detector, you wish you could just see in the ground like X-ray vision, you know? So, and the only people who can do that are the guys who can afford to pay a lot of money to have it done, or spend a lot of money on tech, and then they got to learn it and learn magnetic and geophysics and all this other stuff to be able to use their tech. So this is hopefully the dream answer people wait for. Is like, I wish I could see with my metal detector. Well, now you can see with your metal detector. At least whatever the capabilities of your detector are, or 2 box, or